Mike is ready. I'm ready. But I guess the important question is, are you ready, my friends? Hey, welcome to the Mykel Broady podcast. I am Mykel Broady. Thank you for listening today. You heard me right at the beginning. I decided to substitute the T for Tahoe. We're shooting here. We're recording the episode from the beautiful Lake Tahoe. Shout out to our special guest today for providing this opportunity. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, though. This is the 6th episode of our phenomenal Oxymoronic Gems second season, 12th episode overall. And yes, you guessed it. How could you tell? We're going over another oxymoron today, comfortably uncomfortable. And I got to be honest with you, when I was thinking at the beginning about how I wanted to approach this episode, how I would break down this oxymoron, I was a bit too simplistic at first. In my mind, I was thinking comfortably uncomfortable. That makes obvious sense, right? You're comfortable being uncomfortable. But I understand those are two extremely broad, ambiguous terms. What does comfortable mean to you? What does uncomfortable mean? And so before we get started today, I want to share kind of what that means to me, how I was inspired to think of this idea for a podcast episode. And so I want to start with the latter, actually, uncomfortable. When I think of uncomfortable, I tend to think of 3 different situations, actions in my life, things that I do. So one thing is lacking experience. Whatever I'm doing, and I may lack experience in something, I'm doing something for the first time. That can be uncomfortable, right? You don't have the blueprint for how to go about this. You don't know the how, but at least you know the why to get there. And so that's one area that I feel ties into me being uncomfortable is lacking experience and not really having a blueprint, but still trusting that I can get the job done. Another area of being uncomfortable is redefining normal. You know, we love this idea here on the podcast. It can be uncomfortable to look at, society and say, how can we do things differently? To see things that have been done time and time again, but try to think of a better solution. So that's another area for me that I tend to associate in my mind with being uncomfortable is redefining normal. And the third area I want to touch on is accepting being a work in progress. Shout out to Coach Rich for planting the seed in my mind. But that's how I view myself. I'm always a work in progress, always growing, learning, literally a lifelong learner. But initially, although these are a part of me, at the beginning, it didn't feel that way. It was so much uncomfortable. It put me in weird positions. But that's what leads me to the comfortable aspect of things. When I think of how are things comfortable, it's very simple. It's making something a habit. It's a way of thinking now for you. It's a way of doing. You made this thing that's uncomfortable a part of you. It's who you are. And so, for example, redefining normal. At one point, that was really scary for me. But now I do it all the time. So much so that I created a podcast and made it one of its pillars. And now when we have these episodes, that's what I talk about. And so hopefully this kind of provides a better clarification on what comfortably uncomfortable truly means. But trust me, I don't want it to stop at how I perceive it. You see, this thing of comfortably uncomfortable, a huge goal that I have for you in this episode, is to decide what those parameters for yourself are as it relates to what's uncomfortable mean to you. Is it lacking experience? Is it redefining normal? Is it something else that I didn't mention? That's up for you to decide. But it is important that you do because it ties into balance. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. I'm joined today, my friends, by someone who made it a mission of his to get comfortably uncomfortable and see what it can do for him. But more so than that, I'm joined by an individual who has been a tremendous supporter of myself and especially the podcast. He has no idea I'm mentioning this right now, but kind of creating something for the first time, it's hard to have sustained support. You might have someone listen here and there. You might have them provide you feedback for one episode in the first season. And not to say that I'm not incredibly grateful for that, but I'm incredibly grateful for our special guest today because he's consistently listened to the podcast. He's consistently kept up to date with me, let me know his thoughts, and I'm honored to call him a friend. I'm joined today by McArthur. Chris, welcome finally to the podcast. You've been just an amazing listener for so long. Welcome. Please say hello to our phenomenal listeners.
Yeah, Mykel, thank you for having me today. Huge supporter of the podcast. I've been loving it since day one. I'm just happy to have the opportunity to be here today and have a great conversation with my good friend.
All right, well, let's do it. We're in the right place. We are live in person. So let's start off with a teaser question. What is something surprising you've learned about yourself recently?
Recently, well, just to inform everybody, just graduated University of Nevada, Reno here. So
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I'm in that next stage of life right now, and something I kind of was realizing the past year, especially coming out of the pandemic, is you only have the one life, and you got to experience things, and you can't be stuck in a bubble. COVID got me in that, in that mood where it wasn't doing much, wasn't seeing many people, staying to what you know and not expanding outside of that at all. Mm-hmm. And so that was something, especially with the senior year, coming out of it, really trying to push myself in stuff that I'm not comfortable doing normally, whether that's public speaking, whether that's meeting new people, whether that's traveling to a whole new country by yourself. Those are just some of the things I wanted to explore more. I've definitely been able to do that the past 6 months to a year. Plan to continue doing that in my life.
Well, good for you, and I'm excited to dive a bit deeper into that. And I don't want to waste any time. As a listener, we don't waste time on this podcast from the intro. And so I want to touch on that experience. I mentioned in the intro that you really embodied wanting to be comfortably uncomfortable. You made it a mission of yours. And so you recently took a trip to Europe. Is that right?
Yes.
So tell us a little bit more about this mystery overseas trip. What kind of led up to it, inspiration behind it? Where did you visit exactly in the duration?
Yeah, so I've had this in my mind for a while now. Actually, ever since high school, I've been wanting to go to Europe on a trip. Was going to go senior in high school. They canceled it for seniors. A bunch of stuff happened. Couple years went by. I was going to go to study abroad in Spain last summer. University didn't allow us to go for the reasons that were going on in the world. And so this year, I knew I wanted to go to Europe. I didn't know where. Besides Spain, I knew I wanted to go to Spain. But besides that, I didn't really have much of a plan. I just knew I wanted to experience something new for the first time. I hadn't really been too many other places besides the U.S. and Mexico. Really, that's only culture I'd had experienced so far. So I just wanted to get out there, experience new stuff, and literally travel across the world.
So you went to Europe, and what are some of the countries you had planned on visiting?
Oh, yeah. So my kind of rough itinerary starting was I knew I wanted to go to Spain, so that's where I figured I would start. Flew into Madrid, hit Madrid for a little bit, then went over to Bilbao in the Basque region, which is where I was supposed to do my study abroad program, actually. That's over in the northwest part of Spain. It's kind of French and Spanish culture combined, so
gotcha.
that was super cool. After that, hopped over to Barcelona, had some fun there, a lot going on. And then after that, decided, for sure I knew I wanted to go to Germany, and Germany's always been on the list. Good beer, good culture, and beautiful views. So hit up a couple places in Germany, with Munich being the main point, kind of capital of the Bavarian area. After that, the last couple places I went, had to hit up Amsterdam while I was there, kind of a go-to spot. Had some fun there, then ended off my week in Copenhagen. But yeah, that was kind of the overall trip.
I'm excited to hear more about it. And just to be very clear for our listeners out there, he didn't go with anyone. You were completely alone. You had friends down there in some places, right? But initially, you took the flight by yourself. You did the lodging by yourself. Is this correct?
Yeah, so when I was planning it, the original idea was maybe go with someone else, see what buddies want to come. Mm-hmm. Maybe they come for part of it. But then in the end, people were busy. They could maybe go on this part. So I was like, I'm just going to do it by myself. Whatever, go for it. I really only knew one other person over there, good friend from Sweden. A shout out to Linnea, actually. But besides that, I knew nobody going over there. Everyone I met was meeting along the way, meeting new people daily, and doing it in the hostels the whole time, too. The hostels are a whole experience themselves. And if you don't know what a hostel is, essentially a dorm room, but for random people. So you're over there, 6-bed, 8-bed, 10-bed dorm room that you're sleeping in every night. Random people, new people coming in every day. So that was a whole experience in and of itself.
This is incredibly fascinating. I'm telling you, I got a smile on my face right now. I know we need to make sure we add video to the podcast so you can see the smile. But I got to ask you, Chris, also, I know it seems like a lot of this was spontaneous. You really wanted to be spontaneous on this trip and not have so much of a strict plan in terms of where you're going. But I know there's probably still some goals that you had in mind. So what goals did you have in mind prior? And tell us about them.
In terms of goals, they were still pretty loose at the time. I'm not going to lie. The main goal was, first of all, was just go out and experience new things. Truly be comfortably, get uncomfortable.
Yep.
That was the goal. Just to get out there. From that, some other goals of mine too. Experience some great food. Love the food over there.
Must.
That's a must do, must see, of course. But overall, next to just experiencing new things and new people, I wanted to expand my mindset as well. I feel like in the U.S. we're very one-sided about certain things. It's not always an open mindset here,
right?
And so I really just wanted to learn as well from other people, seeing what they experience on the day-to-day, see how they think, what their perspective is on everything. And it was interesting as well because the U.S. is kind of forefront of a lot of pop culture and news and whatnot. I was able to share and have a lot of shared experiences with people over there, even being from other countries, but at the same time learning so many new things.
I love how you really took the stance of, I need to broaden my perspective of just life kind of in general and the world around me. The world is so much more than the United States. Glad that you had the willingness to have an open mind to get that perspective. I love that. And so now let's actually get into it. Let's get into when you were in Europe. Take us through your first days being there. What was it like? Did you feel uncomfortable immediately? Yeah,
so basically I left on a Tuesday morning, 10:30 in the morning, Vegas time, and had two different flights. Had a 5-hour flight from there to the East Coast. Almost missed my connection to Madrid. We were sitting on the runway. I was like, oh shit. Excuse my language, my bad. And then got off the plane, had 5 minutes to make it to the next flight. Went straight from that 5-hour flight to a 7-hour flight. Never even been on a plane that long, so that was also a new experience for me. So really the first day was just travel. It was like 14 hours, 15 hours of just plane to Spain.
I like what you did there.
And so I had a plan for that, actually. I was like, all right, I'm gonna arrive Spain time, 9 a.m. the next day. I'll sleep on the flight, I'll pop some melatonin, get my sleep on the plane, wake up, be ready for the day, because knew I was going to have a whole day ahead of me. Didn't happen at all. I got on the plane, popped 2 melatonin, couldn't sleep the whole time. So there we go, 7 hours. And by that time, it was getting a little more real.
Got you. And I'm a little bit interested now to hear even more of this uncomfortability. That's not a word, by the way, but you get what I'm saying, and we're going to continue to use it on this episode. But your boots haven't even touched the ground yet. What happened when you touched the ground?
Haven't even touched the ground. I get to Spain. We make it to Madrid. Also, when I was flying over, I knew Madrid was a little bit of a desert, but it was super dusty. It was kind of it was more deserty than I thought it would be, and so that was the first thing I was like, oh, didn't expect this. And granted, could have done a little bit more research on some of the stuff, but I get there, going through security, get my passport stamped, and I'm still hearing a lot of English. A lot of people coming over, so it wasn't too out of my realm just yet. But then after I got through the security and everything, made it down, and once I got down there, I was like, all right, need to figure out how to get into the city. Actually, pretty easy. You got a bus, got there, but right when I got on the bus, by that time, starting from there, I heard no English for a while. So that was one of the things I underestimated, was really how little English they spoke in that area of Spain. Even though it is Europe, a lot of them still didn't speak English, or at least not very well. But then after that, got into my hostel, walked there from the train station, bus station area, got in. Hostel was a little smaller, a little not as nice as the picture showed, but I guess that's most hotels or hostels and all that good stuff. And couldn't check in for a little bit as well. Got there a little early. So I knew I was going to drop my bags. But then when I was waiting, I realized I knew had to plan some other stuff going forward, and I was going to get, for my next location, I was going to take the train up to Bilbao. Then I was looking for the day I was supposed to leave. There were no trains. I did not realize. I thought it was going to be easier.
Yeah.
I guess that's more northern Europe, where the train system's a little better. So I'm there 11 a.m., 11:30, just got in, not hearing much English. uncomfortability is getting a little bit more as I'm going that first day.
Are you freaking out more and more in a bit? Or do you feel like any real nerves setting in? Like
before I got to the hostel, it wasn't bad. It was more just like, okay, new place, a little bit uncomfortable, not bad. When I realized I didn't have transportation to my next place where I was going to be staying on this trip, got a little anxious for a little bit. But I took it back. I was like, all right, we can find flights. Booked a flight in 20 minutes. I was like, all right, sweet. That was easy enough. Got back into it. All good.
Now, I got to ask, obviously, yes, that sounds very uncomfortable, as you just explained. But I feel like you set yourself up for success to begin with because you went in with that mentality of, I want to be comfortably uncomfortable. You were expecting to be uncomfortable. How did that help in your initial reaction to it?
It definitely helped because there were times I was thinking, I was like, all right, took a deep breath. I was like, this is what we're here for, new experience. In the end, like, I'm not here with anybody. It's all up to me.
True.
And nothing's going to go bad. It's still a first world country. It's not all that bad. You just got to adjust. That's all it really is. Take a step back, take a deep breath, and adjust. And that's what I did. So I calmed down a little bit after that, got my bags. I was like, all right, I'm going to go exploring. This is my first day there. So the whole day, honestly, first day was great. Exploring. Food was the next thing that got a little uncomfortable for me. For those of you who don't know, I do have some stomach sensitivity things, being gluten-free, and so that made it a little bit harder. But first day, honestly, wasn't too bad being there once I was exploring. It was really that first night in the hostel that was the max uncomfortable that I was on the trip, and potentially even so far in my life.
What were you telling yourself in that night in particular?
Basically, like when I got there, got back from the day, I was like, all right, I've been up for a ridiculous amount of time now. I'd walked like 20,000 steps that first day too.
More than
so I was
myself.
like, okay, I can't be, like, there's no way I'm not going to go to sleep tonight. And I was getting tired, laid down and whatnot, 10 minutes in trying to go to sleep. Next thing I know, I'm wide awake. Next thing I know, my heart's beating. I don't know why. It was racing out of my chest, and I couldn't know why. It was weird. And granted, I was trying to sleep next to 5 other random people I'd never met before. People in their 40s, people in their 20s, people in their 30s. Half of them didn't even speak English. I didn't even know where some of them were from. And first night, it was about 2 hours. Heart was beating out of my chest. I'd never had anxiety like that. Even listening to the whole Khalid album, American Teen, didn't even calm me down, man.
What? How did that not work?
I know that's my go-to normally. If I'm gonna calm down, hang out. 2 hours, I shit you not, pounding out of my chest. I was ready to call the whole trip, honestly, right there. I was freaking out. It was weird. Didn't like it, but it was in that moment at the same time. Like for those 2 hours, got back in my head, and I was, all right. It's on you. This is the first day. You just got to get through the first couple days, and you're going to be set. Ended up falling asleep. Woke up the next morning. It got better from there.
And I'm glad it did. And perfect segue for us now to transition into when you finally got into that lovely state of being comfortably uncomfortable. We don't want you to just be uncomfortable, but we want you to find comfort in that. And so with that being said, looking back, describe the moment when you knew you were in the lovely state of being comfortably uncomfortable. So even before, I'm guessing a little bit after the state you just mentioned, because that's when it seems like you told yourself you are on this journey, you're not going to give up. But when on the journey did you realize, wow, I've been uncomfortable for quite some time and I'm comfortable with it?
It probably wasn't until about 5 or 6 days into the trip, honestly. Another thing I underestimated was jet lag. I never experienced going over 9 time zones before. So even after the first day, for the first 2.5 days, my stomach was still a little messed up. Everything I was eating, I kind of wanted to throw up afterwards. It just wasn't settling. Not really anxious anymore, but one of those things where it's like you felt out of your element. And that's just symptoms of jet lag that I soon found out. But after those couple days went by, finished up in Madrid, flew over to Bilbao, and it was in Bilbao where I truly was in that state of being comfortably uncomfortable. Bilbao on the trip as well was one of my favorite places by far. The food when I got there was amazing. That was another thing that honestly helped out. When my stomach started feeling better, eating better food, I met some really cool people there as well. First day, I went to the Guggenheim, which is a really famous museum over there. Later that night, met some other super cool people. We were out drinking bars till like 4 a.m. It was wild. And so it was truly the second city I was in. Probably took about 4 or 5 days in the trip where I was feeling that comfortably uncomfortable, where I was doing good. I'm like, these are new experiences, but I'm learning from them at this point and enjoying them. And that was the key, to really enjoy it.
Enjoying it. And that, again, perfect segue. How did you build off of finally noticing you're in the state? I know you kind of touched on this, but in your mind, how did you build off of knowing you're comfortably uncomfortable on this mission in an unknown place?
So after that, honestly, it just everything became so much easier. Beginning of the trip, first week, I was counting the days. I was like, I have this many days left. I have this many days left. And it was like, it felt like a while. After that, I don't even know where the trip went. By the next thing I knew, I was back in Vegas. A month had passed by. But from there on the trip, I just started talking to anybody and everybody. The main place you'll meet most people traveling around is in your hostel room, just because you're living and sleeping with them. And granted, you're not there that much, but that's where you're going to meet a lot of people. But most places have a bar, a restaurant at the bottom of the hostel too. But opening up my mind and my ability to talk to people and just meeting anybody and everybody, that was what really got me to explore and to expand my knowledge on the trip.
How exciting. You literally just explained to us, you went from counting down the days to now making the days count on that trip for after you really embraced being comfortably uncomfortable. I love that. What immediate self-realizations came up, during this time that you noticed about yourself?
I noticed that it doesn't matter who you are. If you say you're introverted or extroverted, people can see me as introverted. People can see me as extroverted. But it's honestly all about how you approach it.
Right.
Certain situations, I may be super extroverted. That's usually with close friends and new people, new experiences, a little more introverted. And it was at that point where I was like, no, I'm not going to take this trip lightly, take this mindset lightly, and just not meet new people, because that's how you're going to learn. You can learn some stuff by just exploring yourselves, and I had a lot of that as well. But until you meet the people there, that's where you're really going to learn, and that takes a little bit of courage as well. And there's actually a good quote. I don't know.
Shoot! He's pulling out quotes.
I don't know if you've ever seen the movie We Bought a Zoo, but for people that are a little more introverted and don't like to talk to people as much, or it's a little bit more difficult, this is a great quote from that movie. Sometimes all you need is 20 seconds of insane courage, just literally 20 seconds of embarrassing bravery, and I promise you, something great will come of it. And so, I don't know why, that quote has always stuck to me ever since I watched that movie 10 years ago or something. And so, I literally thought of that quote when I was over there. It was so weird. And so I knew it was in the beginning, I just need courage. You go up, talk to someone, say, hey, my name is blah, blah, blah.
Right.
What's your name? And honestly, everyone over there wasn't a single person I met that wasn't willing to talk or engage in the conversation. So it's easier than you think.
Can you describe the feeling of being in this state, though? Right? I think a lot of people listening to this right now, if they haven't been there, I trust that we all kind of been there at one point in our lives. Maybe we didn't recognize when we were in the state, but just describe, was it riveting? Did you feel like you were learning so much about yourself in such a short period of time? Kind of describe what it felt like.
It felt really cool, and the first instance of that was when I first met, you mentioned it before, I met these 3 other people when I was in Bilbao. One of them was the guy I was rooming with, and the other, 2 of them were a guy from England, a girl from Germany, and then she was going to be hanging out with this other guy from France. So it was like, why don't we all just get drinks? So we all went out, and granted, they're all 30, but it was after we got to, it was a couple hours in, we're at second or third bar, and I sat back and realized I was like, an American, a Frenchman, a German woman, and an Englishman could sit down at a table, enjoy the same drinks, and talk about similar experiences. It was interesting to see how different we all were, but at the same time how similar. And so that was the thing that really got in my head, where I was sitting there. I was like, this is awesome. This is exactly what I wanted to do on this trip. Meet new people, and in settings like this, just learn.
And we have even talked about arguably one of the most profound learning experiences you had during this trip, which is, why don't you explain for yourself a little bit about your love for pottery? Why don't you tell us about this?
So for those people that don't know me, because I think I'm a little not arrogant about it, but I throw it out there. I love pottery. I enjoy making pottery. And so at the very last week of my trip, something I'd been super excited about, and honestly was a last minute decision that I just happened to find. So there's one famous potter I've been following since high school, past 5 or 6 years now. And he's out of Copenhagen, and he has these week-long classes that he puts on, and normally his stuff sells out right away.
Right.
I just happened to look at his website one morning in April or May, literally a month before my trip, and happened to see that the last week of my trip, it was going to end a week before, but I saw that there was a spot open for that week. I signed up right away. It wasn't cheap. It wasn't something that it was like, you're going to buy spot on, but like I knew I'm going to buy this right now, figure it out later, figure out the flights later. And so I ended my trip with a week in Copenhagen, 6-day long pottery class taught by pottery master, been doing it for 30 years, self-taught as well. And that was one of the coolest experiences as well. And lots of uncomfortableness during that week as well, which I didn't expect at all. I thought it was going to be a fun week, pottery, learn some new stuff. Not at all. No, sir.
Share one of those moments with us.
So the first 2 days were honestly kind of sucky. Super frustrating, because when you're learning something from someone that's mastered his craft, he's been doing it forever, he has his own way of doing it. And so I even had people in our class that they've been doing pottery for 10 years, and they were really good, had their own businesses, even taught their own classes, and they were struggling with learning his method. So the first 2 days was unlearning bad habits, and that was very uncomfortable, because when your body, you have muscle memory to do certain things, and you're trying to force your mind to think a different way, to do something differently than what you're conditioned to do already. It's very uncomfortable. At the end of the first day, I was frustrated, I was annoyed, I was like, this is not what I expected, but I was like, all right, it's all right. We'll walk in there the next day. It'll be better. Second day, still a little frustrating in the morning, but it was just that slow practice, slow learning of what he's doing. And by the end of the second day, third day hit, I was in that flow state a little bit. I was like, all right, I'm learning new stuff. It's working. Not amazingly. You're only 3 days in. You're not going to learn all this stuff perfectly in a week. But at that point, I was enjoying it again, because pottery's something I enjoy. So that was a key moment in that week, because I wasn't enjoying it before. And it's frustrating when you have something that you normally do for fun and it's no longer fun. So after that, once I was comfortable, it was just pure happiness. It was so much fun.
Sounds like it was a cherry on top to just an extraordinary trip. And speaking of that, once you got back to the States, I'm curious to know a little bit about what lessons you learned. I know they say hindsight is often the best to kind of reflect on things, but I'm going to start off with one I want to make sure we're both sure on, is you ought to be damn proud of yourself. Like, that was a hell of an experience to embark on by yourself. It was so fascinating to see your perspective shared throughout Facebook and Instagram and all the apps, and I thought it was even cool just seeing some of the stuff that your father would post about you on on Facebook, and he would just be so excited, that his boy, one, graduated college, but now is embarking on this journey of growing himself. And so kind of how has your perspective on being uncomfortable in general changed after this eye-opening experience?
100%. Right when I got back, I was proud of myself. I was like, I'm glad I did that. And at the end of it, I was glad I went by myself. Traveling by yourself is a very unique experience.
Right.
that I think a lot of people should try to do at least once in their life. Because at that point, you don't have mom or dad or your friends to help you. It's on you. If you miss your bus, miss your train, wallet gets stolen, it's ultimately still on you to figure out that problem. And so once you realize that, you just need to find it in yourself, and nothing's going to be truly bad as long as you can figure it out. It's going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And after that trip, I realized that it was like, you can really do anything you put your mind to. Nothing's ever truly going to go to waste.
How do you plan on continuing to find yourself in the state moving forward?
I just want to keep putting myself in new situations that I haven't been in, meeting new people, even if that's here. I just moved to Lake Tahoe a week ago. I've been here for a week now exactly.
Yes, beautiful home.
That's going to be a new experience in and of itself. I don't know anybody in Tahoe. I'm out here for work for a year. Granted, it's a beautiful place. Awesome venue, awesome nature to explore, but it's a new experience. And some of that is just exploring yourself, meeting new people, doing things that you wouldn't normally do. And I think that's the key of it is not putting yourself in a box, not just saying new experiences or new things aren't good for you. New things are good for you.
Absolutely.
Not all of them are going to be good experiences, but it's something you learn from. Even if you have a bad experience or something bad happens, even on my trip in Europe, it wasn't 100% simpatico the entire time. Not everything happened exactly how I thought it was or perfectly. There were ups and downs for sure, you're still exploring, but you learn from it. And I think that's the ultimate goal is to learn from your failures because your failures are the best way to learn, honestly.
Absolutely. Oh, I love this. It reminds me we need to be more in the business of surprising ourselves. Because it tells me that's what you did. And that's actually why I asked that question in the beginning as a teaser. What's something recently that you were surprised about as it relates to yourself? That's what's possible when you pursue uncomfortability, when you pursue the things that are uncertain, because you're away from normal, you're away from those, routines. Just like you mentioned when you first got into Europe, you had to just realize for a sec, whoa, this is different. This isn't the same pattern of behavior I'm accustomed to. And so I encourage all of our listeners today to get in the business of surprising yourself. But truly, we don't know what we don't know. I tend to say that phrase, but that applies to yourself as well. There's so much that we don't know about ourselves. And it's insane because we go in the mirror, we look at ourselves, and we think we know. Even though we are the best person, the best people, the best individuals to know about ourselves and to guide our journey, there's still so much more work we have to do. And I think hearing your story really emphasizes that. And another thing I want to bring up that I kind of touched on earlier is that element of balance when you think of comfortably uncomfortable. There's a reason I have comfortably in front of uncomfortable, right? You don't want to be strictly uncomfortable. And to me, you want to set those parameters, because here's what I'm saying. You can get to the point, if you're trying to be overly uncomfortable, you might push too far. You might get into the law of diminishing returns. And what does that mean? Typically what I'm saying is you'll get so far uncomfortable, you'll try to push yourself so far that it's no longer benefiting you. They tend to use the example of, say you have workers, and the more and more workers you hire, that's not leading to more productivity for your business. And if anything, the more you hire, you'll get to a point where now you're losing money.
That's too many cooks in the kitchen.
Exactly. And that's the same here. And so I think it's really important to set those parameters, like I mentioned, on how you see yourself as being uncomfortable. And so as I mentioned earlier, for me, it's lacking experience, those type of moments. Redefining normal, or accepting that I'm a work in progress, right? Being those things, letting myself embody that to the point where it's no longer uncomfortable. And that's the beautiful thing about this oxymoron is it's, in essence, to make your uncomfortabilities comfortability, to make that your habit, to make it a part of who you are. And so that's all I want to say is I really encourage our listeners to think about where you can intentionally be uncomfortable in your life and then pursue that rather than leaving it ambiguous and open-ended and potentially jeopardizing your own well-being. Chris, do you have anything to add to that? Because I know that maybe you experience yourself this idea of balance when being uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, I definitely wanted to expand on that. And as you're talking about the don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. I was about to say that, and that's how I know right now we're flowing in this uncomfortable state. But it's true. Like you don't need to be uncomfortable all the time, and you shouldn't push yourself.
Yep.
Even though I was in Europe for 5 weeks, 5 weeks is a long time. You can't go every day, whether in a physical state as well. Like I can't be walking 25,000 steps a day without, being tired at least a little bit throughout those 5 weeks. And another thing was also meeting new people. There were a handful of days, tons of days where I like to explore on my own, just wanted to go out there. Didn't need to meet new people that day. Had met a lot of new people, and I was like, all right, I'm going to go explore this area, something I was interested in, and have your own take on it. And you probably meet people throughout the day and have some conversations, but you're not going to be hanging out with them on the daily. At least that was my experience over there. You don't have to not be yourself 24/7. Like you still want to find that balance. It was even for me. I'm really not a big fan of the club scene or super crowded areas. But when I was in Barcelona, I know that's really big there, the party scene. So I was like, all right, met some girls at night, and there was like, let's go to the club. Hadn't experienced that environment, so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go do something I normally wouldn't do, and had a good time for a little bit. But I left early, and because I realized that wasn't something I wanted to do. I was glad I went out there and tried it.
Right.
But it wasn't something I was a fan of. And so that's also something to realize in yourself. Know what you enjoy as well. You don't need to be doing stuff that you don't enjoy because it's uncomfortable. You put yourself in the situations to find out what you enjoy or what you don't enjoy. It's like we were saying, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And if you don't know you like something, then it's not until you try it out. But if you know you don't enjoy something, you don't have to put yourself in that situation again. So it's really just realizing those two things and truly getting to know yourself.
Chris, and to add on to that amazing insight that you just shared, it's not being so dependent on physicality in your growth. What do I mean by that? Well, typically when we think of growing, improving, so often we may think in terms of physical things, right? You did more, you walked more steps today, so you're better than yesterday. But that is the problem, because you'll get to a point where it doesn't matter how many steps you walk. You might be jeopardizing your well-being. Now, this analogy here with walking and jeopardizing your well-being may not be the best, but you get what I'm saying.
That's why working out.
Exactly.
Most people have Saturday and Sunday, at least for a rest day. Truly good athletes and brilliant athletes aren't going 7 days a week hard every day. You got to realize when you need to pull back.
Right.
And it's the same thing. It's whether it's physical components, mental components, spiritual components. It's all just balancing and figuring out what
I love that
works for you.
Because I was thinking more intellectually in terms of how we can grow. For example, when I was a freshman, I would have this. It was really when I started to embody and have this goal of mine to be better than yesterday's version of Mykel. And so over time, I would want to be better, but initially what I tend to do was I was just doing more. I would try to do more work in that day. I would try to read more pages. I would try to finish more assignments. But that's what I'm saying. That's when it can get problematic and you're being too dependent on the physicality of your action, when really what I could do, I could be improving intellectually. Say, for example, I made a mistake yesterday and I realized today, okay, that wasn't the right move. Here's how I'm going to be better. Hello, you just got better. And it didn't require you to be super physical, do a bunch of stuff. And so I think that's important for us to understand, is so much growth can happen outside of physicality, and I think that's an important part to accept and adjust to. Well, I want to move on now. As you know, we love to do challenges on the Mykel Broady podcast. We're in your home, Chris, and so I'm hoping you have a tremendous challenge for us today. What you got?
I got a couple different ones for different levels if you want to push yourself or not.
I love it.
So the first one it's super simple. Something I actually started doing also this past year is trying new food places. If you're someone that is always eating out and going to the same consistent places.
Me. As you're saying.
So the challenge I did for myself earlier this year was either every week or every other week, depending on how much I'm going out, go to a new food place. Just do something that you're not used to doing. Over when I was in Europe, I did that with just all the food, and I found out so many new different food that I like and enjoy. I was like, wow, this might be my new favorite food with all these different things. And so that's one challenge. That's an easy one if you just want to be a little bit uncomfortable with your food. I know a lot of people are picky, but that's an easy one. Second one, 'cause I know there's a lot of college viewers, we're college-age kids. Another easy one that makes people, that's a little bit harder, is meeting new people. And honestly, I challenge you, if you're in college, meet at least one new person every week, if not more than that, because it's super easy. And the easiest way to do that, I actually heard this on another podcast, evidently, just walk up to someone. It's like, hey, I haven't met you yet. My name is. And in college, that works. That's all you need.
What's your major?
Exactly. That's all you need. You need 20 seconds of courage, like I was saying before, and just talk to someone. You just need to open up your mouth, say who you are, and say, hey, how's it going? The last challenge, this is something, if you're really brave, travel by yourself. You don't have to go 5 weeks all intensive Europe by yourself. That's a lot. But I hope everyone at least travels once in their life by themselves to a place they haven't been. Because that's where you truly find out what you're capable of. Because you're not relying on anyone else at that point, and it's truly on you. I had a special relationship with that, and I think that's something that's very important that everyone should at least look into or think about for sure.
Well, thank you for such thoughtful challenges. We've never had an individual break down different challenges depending on the stage that people are at, so I really appreciate you going that far. Thank you as well for allowing me to come here to your beautiful home here in Lake Tahoe and record this episode. This being the first one, non-virtual, live, kind of me and you face to face. It feels different. I hope that you can hear the difference in our chemistry or how we're going about the conversation. I enjoyed this. This was a new experience for myself. This was a bit uncomfortable for me, given that I had no experience in it, but I'm glad that we all shared this experience with each other together. Chris, do you have any final words for our listeners before you depart?
Yeah, just throw it out to everyone. Your own worst enemy is yourself. And so if you're going to challenge someone, challenge yourself. And it's until you truly find out who you are, that's how you're going to grow. And until that happens, it's going to be very difficult to grow. And I do have one more quote that is on that.
We want all of them, all of these quotes.
I found it of all places on Twitter, but I looked it up. It's from a famous psychologist out of South Africa. You don't get to have a meaningful career or raise or family or leave the world a better place without stress and discomfort. Discomfort is the price of admission to a meaningful life. Right when I saw that, lights went off in my head. Honestly, I saw it during the middle of my trip in Europe while I was scrolling Twitter. And so that was something that was really popped out to me, and I knew I wanted to save that one. But last thought, Mykel, thank you for having me. I love the podcast. Gonna continue enjoying it, and then hopefully we'll get some good beach time after this.
Yes, we'll absolutely hit the beach now. Thank you for your time again. Thank you for having me. Thank you for your insight. I'm sure people are going to learn a lot from this episode. To the listeners, right? You're full of surprises. And I know when people say that, it can be used in a negative way, but you truly are. You're full of surprises about what you can find out about yourself. Explore it. Seek it. In a couple weeks, I will come back with a listener feedback episode. As a friendly reminder, if you would like to be in that episode and you're listening to this podcast fairly early when it was released, as soon as possible, send me your feedback. Let me know from any episode this season your thoughts, what you took away from it, and I would love to include it in our 7th episode, season finale for Oxymoronic Gems. Thank you again for your time, listeners. Have a tremendous morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you find yourself listening to this. Let's hit that music that we all love.
Oh, yeah.